Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today here on Leadership Log, which is an Air Force Lifecycle Management Center podcast of issues of relevance to the community, to across the command. And today, the topic at hand is CROWS. We hear a lot about CROWS. We hear a lot about the great things that they're doing. This is your opportunity to help educate us and explain to us what exactly CROWS is, what problems you are going to tackle. And so, sir, Mr. Bradley, and as you start to speak, please just introduce yourself so that people can kind of acclimate to your voice, since this will be an audio version only as well. So, Mr. Bradley, let's start off at the top. What is CROWS and what is the problem that you're aiming to solve?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Joe Bradley. I am the director of the Cyber Resiliency Office for Weapon Systems. Our problem we're trying to fix is how do I secure and increase cyber resiliency for our warfighters? How do I make sure that the weapon systems that they have are going to enable them to accomplish their mission objectives? So at the very top, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase the resiliency of the systems. We're trying to educate people on what it means to be cyber secure, and to take those lessons and to kind of iterate on them as we learn from other programs, other agencies, and get the best of breed out there for our warfighters. Okay.
So in my home today, I was just thinking about this beforehand. I've got a camera in the backyard. I've got a doorbell in my front of my house. I've got a garage door opener. I've got a thermostat, I've got a robot vacuum cleaner, and all of these things are in the sprinkler system, and all of these things I can control through my smartphone because all of those devices are connected to my Wi-Fi. So is that the kind of connection problem that you're looking at?
So think of that yes. The short answer is yes, that is an attack surface, if you will. Your phone becomes an attack surface. Each one of those entries becomes an attack surface into your overall system. And think of that now in terms of national security. You know, put that onto an aircraft, put it into a ground system. And I'm going to jump over to Steve and Lloyd and let them jump in as well.
Hey, sir. So this is Steve Stolle. I'm the lead for the training education team. Yes, so what we try to do is as we bring on new hires for the CROWS, we're placing them into the program offices, and we're trying to bring them up to speed on just that. You know, how do they analyze the system? How do they look at the attack surfaces? And then how do we try to minimize the amount of attack surfaces? And if the adversary does get in through one of those attack surfaces, how can we best mitigate and continue to work through that and get the mission done? So yes, that's a great example of one of the issues that we try to handle within the CROWS from my perspective.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir. So my name is Lloyd Martin. I'm part of the CROWS Mitigation project team. And, you know, really being part of CROWS, it's been an awesome experience, and it's so forward-looking as far as how do we address the problem. And really, when kind of like Mr. Bradley was already touching on, we're looking at a lot of the cyber protections or the cyber resiliency methodology that's being enforced across the Air Force. But then while we're doing that, we're looking at all the risks. What are the risks that they are encountering? But then also, what's some of the threat associated with that risk? So as we start to look at the risk, we start to look at the threat. Now we kind of a better understanding of where our weapon systems are vulnerable. So now we take that from a CROWS standpoint and start working with the acquisition community, trying to figure out how we can work with our program management offices who are executing the mission from acquisition standpoint, where we have these cyber focused teams who work with the program offices. They kind of work and say, here are the validated risks that we've been looking at. While they are looking at that risk, or the mitigation project team that I work on, we're also looking at those risks, and then we start working with the program offices, trying to figure out, okay, what are potential mitigations that help you to address these risks as you go forward? Keep in mind, when I say mitigations, we're not coming and saying that, hey, CROWS is going to solve all your problems. We would love to, and that's our goal, but really we're trying to reduce the risk. So sometimes if we're reducing those risks by maybe some non-material solutions, by giving you some type of techniques, tactics, and procedures that you can implement, that's still a move in the right direction. But ultimately, whatever CROWS can do to help you reduce that risk, so now when that weapon system goes out there, they have a lot more confidence that if a cyber incident does happen, they can recover from that, and there's a mitigation associated with it. So the mitigation project team, that's where I'm associated with. And then we also have a special project team where we're looking at new technology like TRL 3, 4, but trying to mature that technology to a TRL 6 that we can work with our mitigation team. And then we work with the program office to figure out how to mature it to a TRL 7. So now we can go implement a new capability out there and reduce the cyber risk. So it's kind of all encompassing, and CROWS it's just awesome that the different aspects we get to do. And then we also work with Steve and his team as they are educating and training the Air Force. It's just good times to me to be a part of CROWS and how we're moving forward.
So your domain is all the legacy systems as well as new systems that are being developed today. And it sounds like you're having CROWS representatives in each of the program offices as a way to kind of bake that in from the very beginning. Is that correct?
Hey, sir, this is
exactly. Great, Steve.
Yeah, this is Steve Stolley. Yeah, so that's one of our main efforts for the CROWS. We have a large manpower effort going on. We're trying to hire up to 855 folks over the next 15 years. And we're hiring all different specialties from all different types of engineers to computer scientists, computer operations. So we are making the effort to bring those people, place them in the program offices, and to be able to bring different skills than what the folks out there have right now. As we all know, cyber grows and changes so fast, it's tough to stay on top of developments. That's one of the things CROWS is trying to do for the program offices, is through our manpower efforts and our education and training, we're trying to give them that extra capacity and a little bit different take on some of the courses and workshops to bring that little something extra, something different than what they've been doing in the past. Generally, the program office has been doing a great job with cybersecurity and cyber defense. One thing it looks like we haven't not been doing a great job is the resiliency aspect. So that is what the CROWS is trying to get at, that little extra something different, something more. And my team's trying to help in our way by hiring the right folks or hiring folks that we can train and bring that extra ability and capacity to the program offices directly.
Okay, so you're not talking about not creating a hardware solution that you can just bolt onto a system or some software update that you can patch, but instead having educated people in the program offices looking for ways that they can solve whatever the problem might be. I mean, there might, like Mr. Martin mentioned, in some instances, it might be the use of the product itself or the use of the system. There might be ways to mitigate risk that way.
So I would say that's a great question, because on one half, CROWS we're trying to help bake in solutions, by going through educating, training, getting the right people involved. But again, the CROWS mitigation project team is kind of, would use the term bolt on. We're trying to look at a lot of those systems that have already got their legacy systems, or maybe they've already been through some of their preliminary design reviews or critical design reviews, and they already have design in place where they need some help to say, okay, we have identified, we have a risk. We don't have a mitigation to address it. So that's where the CROWS mitigation project team can come in and start helping them. And they may not have some of the resources available. So we have some subject matter experts that we can reach back to, but then we also can be that leg for them, reach out for other, I would say, organizations or maybe other companies that have a mitigation, and we can start working with them to help resolve those risks. So it's kind of one of those things where we're working to bake in a lot of the risk, or bake in a lot of the training and getting people right in place to help the acquisition community. But if you've gone to a point where you've already developed your design and you need some assistance, CROWS can also step in that way and then help educate you on how to integrate the mitigation also from the system engineering process. So I would like to say we're a well-oiled machine. We've got a lot of aspects that we can address. It's just really program office. Where do you need help? CROWS is here to help you.
And I want to kind of stress that a little bit too, because we are not dictating solutions to anybody. We are really working in partnership with the program offices. We work very closely with the Air Force Research Lab folks. We work with our industrial base. I'm not here to dictate a solution. I'm here to kind of help us all come to the right answer at the end of the day. And that's why, Lloyd mentioned earlier, tactics, techniques, procedures. We use the entire range of .mlpf to look for solutions, because if everything is a hardware solution, then, nobody's thinking. And I like to think that our group thinks quite a bit. So that's what we do. It's partnerships. It's working closely with our customers and making sure that we never lose sight of the warfighter at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And sir, I mean, historically, one of the problems is kind of coming up with solutions that reach horizontally across the entire enterprise. That has been a problem in the past, where our programs tend to go up more vertically. So that kind of explains a little bit of the scope of CROWS. You've got a pretty big ask in front of you then.
We do. We actually, and we recently were arranged in those similar silos. So about a year and a half or so, we actually reorganized to reflect the changing nature of what we need to provide to our customers. We aligned ourselves with Air Force priorities. And Steve Stolle mentioned earlier about the teams that were the cyber focus teams that are going into the program executive offices. The plan is that we start with 3. And it's not a dictate of you're going to have an engineer. We're working through the director of engineering to say, what kind of a person do you need and where do you need them? Not every PEO has the benefit of sitting in one location. So those that have outlier or operating locations outside of the home office, do they need support there? And we've been working to kind of work within our manning document to make those changes to reflect what reality looks like and what the needs of our customers are.
And how is teleworking in the midst of all of this? Has that helped you or hindered you, or is it not really impacted you that much?
I'll field that one. This is Steve Stolle again. So from my perspective, I think our team is actually being more productive. It offers us a chance to focus without the distractions of office life and crank through what we need to get through. It's actually been a welcome change. I really do believe, I don't have hard numbers, but I do believe that we are probably actually getting more done. Once we caught on to the battle rhythm of the telework, now I just see the stuff that we're doing, and it's amazing. We're actually way out in front of where we need to be for the FY21 hiring. We're taking on more education and training projects, almost more than we can handle. Luckily, I just got a new member today to help out with that. So I feel like that the telework has not slowed us down at all. If anything, I think it's improved many aspects of what my team needs to do. So it's just a different way of working, and we've adapted, and we're pressing on, and I think my team's doing good work.
And I have to agree that, I find that this has given me the opportunity to think a little more strategically instead of kind of being running from one place to another or meeting to another. You get an opportunity to be in one location for a while. And I really credit the Air Force for rolling out tools. In the early days, the VPN was kind of spotty. I think within the first week of telework, they had rolled out more tools, they had rolled out more capacity. And I think that's really helped our team to really be able to get our jobs done.
Yes, and I mean, case in point, so much of LCMC is distributed operations. I mean, we've got people at 9 major operating locations, but then a host of other locations beyond that. You gentlemen yourselves, I know Mr. Bradley, you're at Hanscom. Mr. Stolle, you're here at Wright Pat. Mr. Martin, I think you're at Wright Pat as well, correct?
That's correct,
and
sir.
So, and then when you're trying to reach and have a presence in all of the different program offices, that means locations all over the CONUS. So operating in a distributed environment is just something that's going to come with the territory right now.
Yeah, and
So
I would just say that. Oh,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll just say one of the things that I think has been valuable for us as we've been teleworking is the use of the CDR of Microsoft Teams. So we've been taking advantage of that. We've been able to have meetings with folks from Eglin, Hanscom, Hill, out at the LA Air Force Base with SMC folks up in Hanscom. And like Steve was saying, a lot of our teams, we really haven't missed a beat. There are some classified aspects of the nature
Right.
of our efforts that we can't do. But really, not even having the classified aspects has forced us to have, okay, what is the challenges that we're really facing? You know, what are we really trying to mitigate? And kind of pull it away from some of those specific weapon systems and now characterize what the problem is. So it's kind of forced us to think a little more outside of the box of how do we see risk when it comes to cyber resiliency. So, but the use of MS Teams has been really valuable, and how we've been able to use it and share slides, share information.
And speaking of thinking out of the box, so we talked, somebody mentioned earlier, it's cyberspace is constantly evolving. People are always coming up with new ways of getting into systems that they shouldn't be into. So what is it that you gentlemen are doing to try and stay ahead of the enemy, so to speak?
So I'll take that if I, at least take first cut at it. We've been working closely with the intelligence communities so that everything we work on is threat informed. We could spend our entire day just chasing ghosts and shadows and all the cyber actors that are out there. But, who are the folks that really want to do us harm? And that's what we're putting our focus on. So that's one. We're plugged in across, through different forum, to what's going on in our commercial space, what's going on in the clear defense contractors, as well as what's going on with our sister services. And I think having those connections has really helped us to focus and provide the right solutions.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback off what Mr. Bradley says. The Intel community is vital, and this is probably one of the first offices I've been in where someone on my team is actually part of the Intel community. So her name is Brittany Schick. She participates in our team. So any discussion we have as a mitigation team, she's right there with us, and then she can take that information back and start working with a lot of her Intel partners to kind of help us make sure we are characterizing the threat accurately. So that's awesome to be able to work as an integrated team and kind of help each other out.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on board as well. As we bring new people on, the very first brief that a new cyber focus team member gets is the Intel brief. And we do that intentionally because I want them to understand the problem that we're facing, and then we go on and get into what the CROWS does. So their job is to know the threat, understand and analyze the system that they're assigned to, and then work with Lloyd and his team and the rest of the PEO office to come up with those solutions or mitigations. But again, it all goes back to being threat informed. If you don't know what's out there, you don't know what your solution can do, or you don't know what you need to be working on.
And so, gentlemen, what are you doing in terms of, so that we talked about kind of within the program offices and within Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, but what are we doing to educate the rest of the Air Force community, the warfighting community, the users of these products and systems in ways that they can better safely engage?
So Steve, why don't you brag on you and your team and the work you've done there?
All right, sir. So one of the very first projects that education and training team worked on when the CROWS was stood up was a project in conjunction with Air Force A4 LM, and they created what we call the cyber hygiene video. It's got a much longer term out there in ADLS, the Advanced Distributed Learning System. But this was an effort to show the maintainers just basic steps, cyber hygiene, TTPs that we've already talked about, how to protect their weapon systems on a day-to-day basis. And that was a big win. That effort went on to become an actual training item for all maintainers. It's a yearly requirement for them to accomplish watching that video. And ironically, I was just talking to A4LM last week about doing an update to that video. So that was a long project. It was our first one, trying to get our feet wet on how we develop courses or training for the rest of the Air Force. Since that time, we've rolled out a number of different courses in conjunction with AFIT and our other education consortium members, Defense Acquisition and the Cyber College. So we're involved across the Air Force in trying to develop content and present that content as other classes. We have an engineering course that's out there. We also have a aircraft system vulnerability course that's taught through AFIT right now. And we've also inserted content into the cyber testing course that AFIT does as well. And it looks like we're about to get more engaged with Defense Acquisition University in the near future, which is good, because I want to keep that broad perspective and broad DoD perspective. Our initial efforts in education and training also included the Navy and some of the other services. So it's not just Air Force where we see this problem, it's across DoD, and I think the solutions in training are going to come from across DoD as well. So that's a major effort of my team, a major effort of the CROWS. It's tough to come up with resiliency training because that's not something that's normally out there. It's a lot of defense and cybersecurity training. So we're trying to get after what's different, and we've made some inroads, and that's great news for us in the acquisition community.
And also, in order to get the word out, as Joe Bradley again, to get the word out to everyone, we've been doing quite a bit of work with Airman Magazine. They did a nice feature article on CROWS and really looked at it from the warfighter perspective and the work we're doing with the warfighter. So just to make sure that people have got that awareness, right in the forefront of their thinking, and that's that's a big deal of our job, right? Is how can I make sure that everybody thinks of a cyber risk when they're designing a system, when they're implementing a system, when they're using a system. Over.
Hey, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, as far as from the operational community, we're kind of working again with our cyber focus teams, trying to make sure that they are working down the level through the program offices, and then also to some of these newly developed development teams. Make sure I'm saying the right acronym. But really, we're kind of working through our CFTs and our program offices and make sure that information is flowing back up. So again, we can go back out there and help the operation community with mitigations, whether material or non-material.
Okay. And so let me ask you about some other big wins. So the programs. So you mentioned the first outreach was your training video, sir. What are some other objectives that you've hit in the initial outlay that have helped get the project moving? So some other early wins.
From a personal perspective, I think getting the ability to talk and work classified. I know there's a building effort with the fighter bomber where we opened up a new skiff for them. Given that capability to talk about the threats and talk about the mitigations in a classified environment, it was a big win. And the CROWS in general has a number of those projects in the works right now. Just that ability to share information is a huge win because, as you know, a lot of information gets stovepiped, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the CROWS trying to be a cross-cutter. Right. Another one for us is definitely the program protection systems security engineering course. CROWS has developed some guides that has pulled the best of the best information from across DoD and also industry and put it into and we use the cyber focus teams from the CROWS to kind of push that information and knowledge about those products to the program offices. And then we are also able to turn that into a number of different courses. And I think our AFIT instructors have been around at various bases within LCMC and even some other bases outside of the command. And I'm pretty confident my numbers are right. I think they've taught well over 1,200 students that what we call the PPSSE course. And the only thing that slowed that down was the coronavirus. So once we can travel again, we'll probably start doing more of that. I do know one of our other courses, aircraft cyber vulnerability assessment course is being taught through Teams right now, and I think they just did a class of close to 50 students, and that's another course. We've done upwards of 1,000 students across the Air Force. So once we get these things developed within the CROWS or adapt to what the CROWS needs, pushing that stuff out to the community makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Well received.
I think, and real quick, I think another big win, a couple of them. One has been, excuse me. One has been the creation of the System Security Engineering Guidebook, and program protection planning and incorporating. But more importantly, what we did is we distilled the relevant information down into an 80-page memo that was signed out by the 4 acquisition center commanders. There's language that would go in the systems, system specifications, statements of work, sections L and M of an RFP, and we've managed to get a chart into the acquisition, the ASP deck that speaks to cybersecurity and cyber vulnerability. That's a huge win. The other is on the Intel side. We've created this cybersecurity intelligence working group, the CISTIWIG, that's run on a monthly basis that incorporates, intelligence from around the whole of government to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're all speaking the same language, and that we're sharing information. We also publish a monthly cyber buzz that gets information out there, and not only to our acquisition community, but also to the leadership inside the Pentagon.
Yeah, from a mitigation standpoint, I would say one of our early wins, our project has been a project we call Vegas S, where this is allowing us to use a 1553 data bus where we can allow information only to flow in one direction. The reason why we call it Vegas is because what stays in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So it's kind of one of those things where a weapon system can hook up this Vegas S miniature LRU, hook it up to their pipeline of how they're communicating the bus information at 1553. And then they can also, on the other end, connect it to a COTS device, which now won't allow that COTS device to have any pathway of information to flow up to the weapon system. So we kind of block it where it's going forward. So that's one of the mitigation efforts that we've been able to deliver. We have prototypes that are actually out there right now. We're trying to work with some of the weapon systems to figure out a pathway to integrate. So this is, again, another success story from CROWS as we're going forward. And we have multiple mitigations that should be done at the end of this fiscal year, or the end of this calendar year, that will also be available.
Okay. And so, gentlemen, kind of wrapping this up now, is there anything that I didn't ask about that you think our listeners would be interested in?
I would say going forward, and this is one of the initiatives, and I'm looking forward today, I can tell Mr. Bradley that we have what we call a mitigation handbook. So we're working on that right now, and that mitigation handbook, what it's going to get to do is say, okay, here's the risk resolve, here's the mitigation, here how it was integrated, or example of how it can be integrated onto the aircraft, and then now we can start sharing that across the Air Force. So that, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be just CROWS mitigation. If there are other mitigations that weapon system or program officers have had success with, we are engaging with them to get that information. And we want to be able to push that information out through the handbook to make sure that across the Air Force, everyone can start to see here, there are some other solutions or enterprise-wide solutions that you can integrate. Some of the challenges right now is just dissemination from a classification level. So we're trying to make sure that we're protecting that data. But I look forward to the day we can say, yeah, the mitigation handbook is out there for the public. You guys can go and find out ways to help your resolve your risk in your program office.
I'd like to say, as a parting shot, if people are listening to this and they're working in a program office, if you don't know who your cyber focus team members are, I would ask around, get to know them, get to know what they can do and bring to you, and ask them questions. And they're there to help you. They're not working in a vacuum. So know who they are, get some information from them, and they are the source for folks in the program office of getting that conversation started about how CROWS can help you. So reach out. I know they're going to try and reach out as well, and make those connections, and hopefully, all turn out better products.
The other thing I would also explain to people, excuse me, as a final parting thought, I would actually like to share that we actually have an email address. If anybody does have any cyber issues, they have been able to find their cyber focus team. It's crows@us.af.mil. Any questions you have, send it here. It's monitored, and we respond back. So that's an easy way to get a hold of us.
All right. Well, that's great. Gentlemen, thank you. This conversation has been very interesting. I appreciate your time this morning. And going forward, we hope that you guys will help us secure systems so that we can fly, fight, and win on and in the future.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.